I would just introduce the speakers. Starting at this end, we have Russell Hobby, General Secretary of the National Association of Head Teachers, who I'm sure you all know. We have Martin Latham, who is Head Teacher of Robbinswood Primary School in Gloucester, and has been since 1998. Robbinswood is now an academy. We have James Penny from European Electronic, an IT company, who was previously a director of the Harris Federation of Academies. We have Francis Gilbert, who has 20 years experience as a teacher. He's the author of I'm a Teacher, Get Me Out of Here, and he's also a journalist, and one of the founders of the Local Schools Network. And last but not least, we have Alistair Smith from the Anti-Academies Alliance. And I think I'll ask Alistair to begin.
Okay. Right. I was asked to address certain questions, and the first one was, are academies and free school delivering an education revolution that Mr. Gove promised? Well, the answer is absolutely not. There's not a single shred of evidence anywhere that academies are innovating in curriculum and pedagogy. There is some evidence that they're actually narrowing the curriculum rather than innovating it, because they're more focused on exam success because of the structure and the need to compete in a market and league tables. And I would like you to think about this word innovation, because it's I'm a great fan of Shakespeare, and in Shakespeare's time, Shakespeare used to talk about mountebanks who were quack doctors going around with remedies for this and that and the other. And I like to think of academies and free schools as a quack remedy for a problem. There are problems in our education system, but this is a fake remedy, because really what it's saying is academies are some sort of new educational transformation. It's a structural change. We know that structural change has hardly any impact on changing the outcomes for children. All educators know that this is about improving the quality of teaching and learning, and there's no evidence that academies do this. So I like to think that the whole innovation that's being spread around here is actually a mask for the word privatisation. The real agenda behind academy and free schools, and make no mistake about it, this isn't me who says this is the government. They're about to put all the academies into the private sector. This is a political strategy for school improvement that has no basis in evidence about school improvement. So that's the first point. The other questions, whether free schools have succeeded in giving more children access to good schools. Well, there's no evidence of that at all, because there's no evidence that free schools are good schools, so that's a straightforward one to answer. I'm sure some free schools might be good schools, but we'll have to wait and see. The impact of free schools and academies on being free from local authorities. Well, I'll quote you a great friend of mine, Michael Wiltshaw, the chair of Ofsted, who says that we need a middle tier. So we're busy smashing up local authorities, and yet Michael Wiltshaw now admits we need a middle tier, which is what the local authorities is. This is insanity. Breaking up local authorities is nothing to do with freedom, it's everything to do with cost cutting and privatisation. And the last point, I hope I'm doing me 3 minutes. The last question was, is the UK moving towards a for-profit education model? And what would be the potential impact of this? Well, yes it is. Michael Gove made it clear that that's what he wants. They are going to put the academies, the intention, or at least the Board of Education is discussing, the board that runs the Education Department or oversees the Education Department is discussing putting all academies in the private sector and allowing them to run for profit. So we are moving down this route, and the potential impact, well, this is going to be divided. What you'll see, if you get a market in education, is you get winners, but you also get losers. It will do nothing. I mean, again, you don't need to believe the Anti-Academies Alliance. The Academies Commission, set up by Pearson, made very clear that if we continue down this path, it will lead to greater inequalities between schools and between children. It is lunacy. The market, we know what the market means in every other sector of society. Look at it in health, look at it in the financial sector. It means certain people do very well and certain people do much worse. I believe strongly we can have an education system where all boats rise. That means a collaborative model, people working together, teachers talking to each other, head teachers sharing experience with each other. The London Challenge was a fantastic model. It improves schools at a better rate than academies have done. We already have the expertise within the system, and this whole thing, the next chapter of academies, I'd like to shut the book and get back to a sensible education policy based on what people who work in education, teachers, parents, governors, head teachers want, rather than what politicians force down our throats.
you, Alistair. That's a pretty robust start to the debate. I think I'd now like to go to someone who I imagine will feel quite differently about things and ask Martin Latham for his contribution. Martin.
Hi. Hello. Obviously, some of my views are slightly different to Alistair, but I'm not here to promote Mike to go. None whatsoever. His views and my views on a number of things are completely different, but I think that's important. I actually don't think it's about systems to start with. Any school that you work in, it's about what you want to do for the children. And if we've got time, which we haven't, I'd actually ask you to a bit of drawing today, and draw for me what do you think you want your children to be like when they leave your school. Having done this sort of thing a lot in the past with a whole range of people, including unfortunately education ministers, we talk about things like aspirational, we talk about children being grounded, having a heart, yes, numeracy and literacy. And the question I would ask you at the end of it is, on a Monday morning when you're in there, is that what you're doing? Now the vast majority of you, quite frankly, aren't doing that, because you're driven by something else, such as the curriculum, and we all saw the nonsense that came out recently. In our school though, we do that. In our school, we're very clear about what's important. Children have got to be literate, they've got to be numerate, you teach them to think, and you develop self-esteem. And I listened to two people here this morning. You had Tanya Byron on first, and a gentleman called David Mitchell. And they were quite inspiring. But what inspired me was that's what they were talking about. And the reason we went academy status is we were well down the line anyway. We're a foundation school, we're a trust school, we're very independent in terms of our thinking and what we did. So for me, that's what academies are about. If you actually want to drive a school forward, the potential actually is in your school now. Even schools that are in categories, the potential's there. The problem you've got is tapping into it. Now, Alistair before was talking about the middle tier. Well, the middle tier's never worked in the past. Local authorities have not got a great track record in terms of improvement. We talked about the Academies Commission. He mentioned that earlier on, which is a reasonable idea in terms of looking at where academies are, but we're at a very, very early point there. And actually, if you read it, it virtually ignores converter academies, which is 75% of academies, and it virtually rubbishes primary schools. So I'm sorry, that document at the moment is not worth the paper it's written on. In terms of the other questions that we've been asked to look at today, free schools, I can't give you an opinion on free schools. We're not a free school. We're an academy school, and we went into it completely because what we wanted was the autonomy and the ability to draft the curriculum that we want. And we will continue to do that. And the other important thing is, if you want to do that, the main thing is that you actually develop your staff. So a moot point might be actually the staff are far more important than the children. If I can make the staff as effective as possible, both personally and professionally, then those children get the best deal possible. And by us actually taking on the complete responsibility away from the local authority, us driving it, we're able to do that. So any system that does that for me is what we should do. We're actually opening another school in September, one of the needs schools because of the numbers of children. And the capacity we'll then have as 420 place primary schools, provide the best education possible for those children, is immense. Way more than we can do as one school, and way, way more than we can do if we actually work with the local authority.
Thank you, Martin. Next, I would like to go to Francis Gilbert to hear his thoughts on exactly why the local schools network doesn't approve of so many of these reforms. Francis.
Thank you very much. I've got a PowerPoint, so I will try and do this. If it's working, it seems to be. Alright, wrong way. Okay. I'm standing in the middle here. I supported my son's school to be an academy. As Alistair will know, we had a sort of tangle over this matter because it was in a deprived area in Bethnal Green. It had 60% of children on free school meals. It needed the independence from the local authority. It wanted to set up a sixth form. It was having issues with taking excluded children, and other schools weren't in the neighbouring area. It had a falling roll, and it basically was going to either be shut down or merged if it was in the local authority. Since becoming academy, it has thrived. It's got an outstanding in all categories from Ofsted. Its results are very good. So the academy process for that school has been very good overall. But if you look at the overall programme, I actually have big issues with the programme in allowing so many schools to become academies. I think it should have been a targeted programme looking at the schools in the most deprived areas. But what's actually happened is that schools that have been doing very well anyway have grabbed the cash. The initial kind of converter academies, you had about 6, it's the bottom line here, schools in the country's poorest areas are up to 6 times less likely to become an academy. So what happened was the better schools, the grammar schools, voluntary aided schools, were grabbed the cash. And so what the net result is that the poorer schools have been deprived of those extra resources because of this programme. Henry Stewart, wonderful blogger for Local Schools Network, probably more anti-academies than I am, crunched the figures, and if you look at it online, it's very clear that academies don't do any better than their local authority counterparts. There's no magical formula about becoming an academy. You don't suddenly become a great school. So that extra £1 billion spent on the programme could have been spent so much better in the system. Has it closed the attainment gap? Well, very respected academics for the Centre of Economic Performance say, and I quote, "Under the coalition government, the Academies programme is now likely to reinforce advantage and exacerbate existing inequalities in schooling. At a time of budget restraint, it seems natural to question whether large expenditure involved in converting these advantaged schools to academies is justified." Free schools, it's the same story. The parents from wealthier backgrounds have taken cash to set up their own schools. Religious organisations have segregated their children from local communities. At least 3/4 of the coalition's flagship free schools have admitted a lower proportion of deprived pupils than is the average in their areas. In my own area, Tower Hamlets, there is a free school, Canary Wharf College, which admits just 2% of children on free school meals, with a local average of 48%. So you see how it's just a school for rich people's children. So I've run out of time, but I think overall the policy has been very wasteful. It needs to be targeted much more closely. Thank you.
Thank you for answers. Next, I'd like to go to James Penny from European Electronic to hear what he has to say. James.
Building on a couple of themes from colleagues, I've worked in education for 30 years. I was a teacher in a very large local authority maintained school for many years. Worked in various places, worked for a chain of academies recently, worked for a group of independent schools that turned 2 schools into academies. Seen lots of reasons and rationales for moving to academies and free schools. Interesting about the comment about, should it have been targeted? It kind of did start, didn't it, as something targeted at schools that maybe were failing, and providing support for those schools to come out of those circumstances by bringing in experience and good quality learning and education from schools that were close. And now it's turned into something that any school really can turn into an academy, and anybody can start a free school. Is that bad? Is that good? I'll come back to that in a minute. I'd like to build on another comment. Quite passionate about communication, collaboration and sharing. IT is my thing. I'm really clear that technology is not used as well as it could to share really good, high quality, effective practice between organisations, and schools within 10 minutes of each other really don't share unless people get in cars or walk and go to them, and technology can do some of those things. And the federation I've just come out of, which is the Harris Federation, which I know people have strong different views on, one of the things it did do is it took good high quality leaders, good high quality advanced skills teachers, and it spread their knowledge and expertise across schools that weren't doing as well as they should be, picked up students by their bootstraps and gave them some aspirations which perhaps they didn't have before. And that was done by physical people moving around, but also through the technology. So just put the politics to one side and say, you know, do these organisations have the power to share, communicate and collaborate better? Maybe that's something that the policy can do. What I'm seeing in the free school arena is, and I don't know whether this is good or bad, I'll make a view in a minute, is an incredible amount of innovation. As European Electronic, we're seeing people come out to the market and want to put IT systems in, and they're talking about their educational vision and strategy. And there's an incredible rich diversity in what people are talking about. Is that innovative? It's looking at doing things differently and trying to target at local communities to say this community needs something different. And we have some leaders and some parents and some people with a vision for making that better. Whether that is just going to end up with people who are very articulate creating good schools, I think that one's still out. Does everything transfer everywhere? I don't know. I've seen some incredibly good stuff. I've seen some less good stuff. Communication, collaboration and sharing, get the good everywhere, seems to be something which I've seen work quite well. Okay.
And last but not least, Russell Hobbing. Russell.
Thank you. If a school makes a free and unforced choice to become an academy, I've got no problem with that whatsoever. And our association, National Association of Head Teachers, will support our members who make those sorts of choices. I don't think there's anything magic in becoming an academy. I think there are successful and unsuccessful academies, just like there are successful and unsuccessful maintained schools. But if there's something in the freedoms and the autonomy of academy status that helps a school fulfill its vision, the kind of vision that Martin outlined earlier, and if it will take that independent vision forward, then it's the right thing to do. The caveat I have with that is that one would expect those schools to continue to fulfil their responsibilities to the community and family of schools around them and to participate within that. And I think one of the things that we lack in education is the educational equivalent of the Hippocratic Oath. I think that we need to think about how do I improve my school without harming the schools around me. And if I'm playing with the selection criteria or admissions criteria in order to get a more advantaged group of pupils, I'm not improving the education system, I'm just improving my own results, and I don't think that's anything to be proud of. But if I am able to improve my school on a fair and level playing field, and indeed if I can improve my school while helping those schools around me, then I've got every reason to be proud of that. And I don't see why converting to academy status means that the leadership team of a school should lose their values and principles. There's no reason why that should happen. Again, we all know heads of maintained schools who like to build empires and who don't play the game in terms of fair admissions criteria. There's no reason why just becoming an academy should lead to that. And I think as long as people stick to their values on that, then we should be okay. I want my members to enter academy status with their eyes wide open. They need to be very clear on how real the freedoms are and what they can and can't do with them, because some of the freedoms are, I think, chimerical in that they're not as advantageous as we would wish. And the thing that we stand most opposed to as an association is the forced academy movement, where schools do not have that free and open choice to become an academy, but are swept up by the DfE's academy brokers. And again, I wouldn't want to defend long-term underperformance. If a school is on a declining trend over a large number of years and we've put in as much support as we can into that school and it's not worked, then clearly something needs to change within the leadership team of that school. My problem with the Forced Academies movement is that they're not targeting it at our worst schools in the country. They're not targeting it at failing schools. They are picking up strong and improving schools as part of this and sweeping them up without any due process or procedure. There's quite significant numbers of schools who are improving faster than the rate of general academies that are being put into this movement. And I think that's where we cross the line between free and open choice for schools to pursue their vision and a more centralising force that's pushing schools into the wrong way.
Thank you, Russell. Okay, in a second I'm going to open up to the floor. I'm sure you're all bursting with questions at this point. Before we do though, I'd just like to ask a question for all the panellists. Is this entire debate colossal distraction? Because there are very good maintained schools and there are very bad maintained schools, and the same can be said about academies. Are we focusing on a slightly irrelevant structural idea here, rather than looking at what makes a good school a good school.
Yes, and that's the most painful part about having these conversations. I think all the evidence shows that it's the quality of teaching and the quality of leadership that drives school performance. The exact governance structure and organisational structure of the education sector is an astonishingly weak lever for change. Unfortunately, it's one of the only levers that's clearly in the hands of politicians. And if you want to look like you're doing something, whether you're the CEO of a major multinational or the Secretary of State, you rearrange the structure of the organisation that you're working with. To what degree it actually improves the quality of teaching, I think again depends on what schools do with the freedoms that they're given. But schools already fail to use the full extent of the freedoms that are there to them. And what we haven't really addressed is the culture of I think, fear that pervades the education system, which stops the innovation that we need.